The music was soft, elegant, almost too elegant. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of perfectly decorated tables. Laughter echoed across the grand ballroom, glasses clinked, cameras flashed. It was the kind of wedding people posted about for years. And at the very back table, near the tall white curtains, sat Elena Morales, alone. Her navy dress was simple. Not designer, not flashy. She had styled her hair herself after putting her 6-year-old son Mateo to sleep at her neighbor's apartment. She almost didn't come, but the bride, Sophia, had been her college roommate once. Before life happened, before Elena's husband walked out when Mateo was 3 months old, before the unpaid bills, before working double shifts at the hospital reception desk, she didn't belong here anymore. At least, that's how it felt. Across the room, women in shimmering gowns whispered, "Isn't that the single mom Sophia mentioned? She came alone, how awkward." Elena kept her posture straight. She'd learned the trick, sit tall even when you feel small. She focused on the centerpiece roses so she wouldn't notice couples swaying on the dance floor. That's when someone pulled out the chair beside her. "Is this seat taken?" The voice was calm, deep, controlled. She looked up, and froze. It was Daniel Castillo, the CEO of Castillo Holdings. Even she knew that name. His company had been all over the news for acquiring tech startups across Latin America. Business magazines called him ruthless, visionary, untouchable. He definitely did not belong at the back table. "No," she said quickly. "It's not taken." He sat down like he had every right to. Which he probably did. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel leaned slightly closer, his tone low enough that only she could hear. "Would you do me a favor?" She blinked. "Excuse me, pretend I'm your husband tonight." Her heart nearly stopped. What?" He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "Half the room thinks I came alone because I can't keep a relationship. The other half is trying to introduce me to their daughters." His jaw tightened slightly. "I need 5 minutes of peace." She stared at him. "And you think pretending to be my husband will help?" "I think," he said gently, "that you're the only person here who looks like she doesn't want anything from me." That hit her unexpectedly. Before she could answer, 2 elegantly dressed women approached. "Daniel, we were just saying." He moved instinctively. His hand slid to the small of Elena's back, warm, steady, protective. "Sorry," he said smoothly. "I was just catching up with my wife." Wife. The word hung in the air like a spark. Elena's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. The women blinked. "Your wife?" Daniel nodded calmly. "Elena." Every eye at the nearby tables shifted toward her. This was insane, but something inside her, something tired of being pitied, judged, overlooked, straightened. She placed her hand gently over his. "Yes," she said softly. "We've been married 7 years." Daniel's thumb pressed lightly against her waist in silent gratitude. The women forced smiles and drifted away. Silence returned. After a few seconds, he exhaled. "Thank you." She slowly removed her hand. "You owe me an explanation." A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Fair." He glanced across the room toward the head table. "The bride's father has been trying to push a merger discussion all evening. If he thinks I'm emotionally unavailable, he backs off. If I look unattached, I become a business opportunity." Elena crossed her arms. "So I'm your shield, for tonight." She should have been offended. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. Because when he looked at her, there was no pity. No calculation. Just honesty. "You can stop anytime," he added quietly. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable." She hesitated. Then, almost impulsively, she said, "I get a dance out of it." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Deal." The music shifted into a slow romantic melody. He stood and offered his hand. The room went still as Daniel Castillo led the mysterious wife to the center of the floor. Whispers erupted. Elena's heart pounded as his hand settled respectfully at her waist. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I haven't done this in years." "Then let me lead." And he did. Not arrogantly, not possessively, just confidently. For the first time that night, she laughed. A real laugh. And when he looked down at her, something in his expression changed. This wasn't just an act anymore. At the edge of the room, Sophia, the bride, stared in shock. Because she knew something Elena didn't. Daniel Castillo never danced at weddings. Ever. And he never introduced anyone as his wife. The music swelled across the grand ballroom as crystal chandeliers shimmered like captured stars above the guests. Laughter echoed between marble columns, and cameras flashed near the dance floor where the bride and groom shared their first dance. But at table 14, Emily sat perfectly still. Her fingers trembled slightly around the stem of her glass. She could still hear the whisper in her ear. "Pretend I'm your husband tonight." She hadn't expected him to mean it. She certainly hadn't expected what came next. When Daniel Hayes, CEO of one of the country's most powerful tech companies, took her hand and stood up, the entire room shifted. It was subtle at first. A few curious glances, then whispers, then silence. Because everyone knew Daniel. He was the billionaire who never attended weddings. The cold executive who had once said in an interview, "Love is inefficient." And now he was walking hand in hand with a single mother in a simple navy dress. Emily's ex-husband's family watched in disbelief. Her former mother-in-law's lips tightened into a thin line. Her ex, Marcus, looked like someone had just stolen the air from his lungs. Daniel leaned slightly toward Emily. "Relax," he murmured softly. "You're doing great. I don't even know how to do this," she whispered back, her pulse racing. "You don't have to do anything. Just stand beside me." They reached the center of the ballroom. And Daniel did something no one expected. He pulled out a chair for her. The room fell silent. The symbolism was loud enough. Respect, protection, claim. Marcus stood abruptly. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the music. Every head turned. Daniel didn't raise his voice. But when he spoke, it carried. "Is there a problem?" Marcus scoffed. "Yeah, that's my ex-wife." Daniel's jaw tightened just slightly. "And?" The single word felt like thunder. Marcus stepped forward. "She has no business pretending she belongs here." Emily felt the humiliation rising again, the same feeling she'd battled for years, being treated like she wasn't enough. Daniel's hand gently pressed against her lower back, steady and warm. "She doesn't have to pretend," he said calmly. "She belongs anywhere she chooses to stand." Gasps rippled across the tables. The bride's father hurried forward, trying to diffuse the tension. "Let's not make a scene." Daniel's eyes never left Marcus. "You invited her," Daniel continued smoothly. "If you didn't want her respected, you shouldn't have sent the invitation." Marcus clenched his fists. "You don't even know her." Daniel's gaze softened, just slightly. "You're wrong." Emily's breath caught. He turned to her fully then, as if the rest of the room had disappeared. "She's raising a son alone," Daniel said, his voice quiet but firm. "She works 2 jobs. She never asks for help. And she still shows up to places where people try to make her feel small." The ballroom was utterly silent. Even Marcus seemed stunned. Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "How do you know that?" she whispered. Daniel hesitated. Then, for the first time that evening, his confident composure cracked. "Because," he said softly, "I've been watching you." The room erupted in murmurs. Marcus laughed bitterly. "That's creepy." Daniel ignored him. 3 months ago," he continued, "your son fainted at the community park." Emily's heart skipped. "You were alone. Everyone else panicked. You didn't. You carried him yourself to the car and drove straight to the hospital." She stared at him. "You were there." Daniel nodded. "My niece was playing nearby. I saw everything." He paused. "And I saw something else." "What?" "You didn't cry in front of him. You smiled, even though you were terrified." The memory hit her like a wave. She had been terrified, but she hadn't let her son see it. Daniel's voice lowered. "That's strength. Real strength." Marcus scoffed again. "So what? You're her knight now." Daniel finally looked at him. "No, I'm someone who recognizes value when I see it." The tension in the room was unbearable. Then, slowly, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. Emily's breath caught. He couldn't possibly. But he wasn't pulling out a ring. He pulled out a simple business card. He handed it to Marcus. "If you ever try to intimidate her again," Daniel said evenly, "call me first." The message was clear. Protection, power, boundary. Marcus stared at the card like it was a weapon. The bride, clearly uncomfortable, signaled for the band to start playing again. Music slowly filled the room. The spell broke. Guests returned to their tables, though whispers lingered like smoke. Emily turned to Daniel, her heart pounding. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Daniel extended his hand. "Dance with me." Her instinct was to refuse. But something inside her shifted. Maybe it was the way he'd stood beside her. Maybe it was the way he'd spoken about her. Or maybe it was the way he'd looked at her, as if she wasn't invisible. She placed her hand in his. The music was soft, romantic. As they moved across the dance floor, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safety. You really don't believe in love? She asked gently. Daniel exhaled. I didn't. She waited. My marriage was strategic, efficient, predictable. He gave a faint smile. It failed spectacularly. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me what doesn't work. And what does? He looked down at her. Respect, loyalty, courage. She swallowed. In pretending, his eyes softened. I'm not pretending anymore. Her heart skipped. The song ended, but neither of them moved right away. Finally, Emily stepped back slightly. Why tonight? She asked. Why me? Daniel hesitated. Because I saw the way they looked at you when you walked in. Her throat tightened. And I hated it. His honesty was disarming. You deserve someone standing next to you, he continued. Not because you need saving, but because you shouldn't fight alone. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. I've been alone for a long time. I know. He brushed the tear away gently. And if you let me, you won't be anymore. The vulnerability in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the cold CEO from magazine covers. This was a man who had been watching quietly, learning, waiting. The evening wound down slowly after that. Guests avoided Emily now, not out of mockery, but uncertainty. Daniel walked her to the parking lot. The night air was cool and still. My son will be asleep, she said softly. My neighbor's watching him. Daniel nodded. I'd like to meet him. The request wasn't forceful, it was hopeful. You barely know me, she said. I know enough. He paused. But we can take it slow. She studied him under the dim parking lot lights. You really came tonight just for this? For you, he corrected. Her heart fluttered dangerously. I don't have a perfect life, she warned. No private jets, no galas. He smiled faintly. I'm tired of galas. Silence settled between them. Then she surprised herself. Would you like to come over for coffee? Just coffee. His eyes warmed. I'd like that. As they drove separately to her small house on the edge of town, Emily's mind raced. What was she doing? Inviting a billionaire CEO into her modest world. But when she unlocked her front door and stepped inside, something felt different. Not intimidating, not unequal, just two people. Daniel looked around her cozy living room, worn couch, toys neatly stacked, framed drawings on the wall. He stopped at one crayon drawing. A stick figure family. Is this you? He asked. Emily nodded. And that's my son. Daniel studied the empty space beside the two figures. There's room here, he said quietly. Her breath caught. Before she could respond, a small voice echoed from the hallway. Mom. Her son stood there, sleepy-eyed. Emily froze. I thought you were asleep. He rubbed his eyes. I had a bad dream. Daniel stepped back respectfully. Emily knelt down and hugged her son. It's okay, sweetheart. The boy looked at Daniel curiously. Who's that? Emily hesitated. Daniel crouched down to the child's level. Hi, I'm Daniel. The boy studied him carefully. Are you a bad guy? Daniel blinked, then smiled gently. No, I'm someone who thinks your mom is very brave. The boy considered that. Okay. Emily's heart melted. She looked at Daniel, overwhelmed. This wasn't pretend anymore. This wasn't a performance for a ballroom audience. This was real. Later, after her son returned to bed, they sat quietly with 2 mugs of coffee. You don't scare easily, Daniel observed. I had to learn not to. He nodded slowly. I don't want to rush this. Good, she said softly. Neither do I. Silence again, but this time it was comfortable. Warm, hopeful. Finally, Daniel stood. I should go. She walked him to the door. Under the porch light, he hesitated. Next time, he said, I won't ask you to pretend. She smiled gently. Next time, maybe we won't have to. He stepped closer, but didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, he brushed his thumb lightly against her hand. Good night, Emily. Good night, Daniel. As she closed the door, her heart pounded, not from humiliation this time, but from possibility. Across town, at the Grand Hotel ballroom, whispers still swirled about what had happened. But none of that mattered anymore. Because the single mom who once sat alone at table 14 was no longer alone. And the CEO who claimed love was inefficient had just discovered something far more powerful than strategy. He had found courage, and this time, no one was pretending.